And we have audio. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. This is Michael from the Marks Group Live. Excited to be here today teaching user class basic setup to you live and in person. Today, we're going to try to cover the following. We're going to look at updating your personal settings in Zoho, where to do that, how to do that, and what options you have. We're going to look at some standard Zoho modules, where to find them, and briefly what you might want to do with some of them. Then we're going to look at how to get around in Zoho, navigating from the main menu and some of the most useful shortcuts that you can take. After that, we'll move straight into some tips for navigation in views. And finally, we're going to look at using some filters to find the exact data that you're looking for. We're going to spend today about 45 minutes, maybe 60 minutes going over the classwork, and then we'll open up the last 45 to 60 minutes for a chat discussion where I can answer any of the questions that you provide to me in the chat window that's on the right side of your screen. I expect you'll see it about there. If you're viewing this on a mobile device, there should be a chat window available there as well, where I ask you to please place all of your questions during our class today. By the way, that chat window will close a few minutes after the class is over, but I encourage you to continue asking questions for clarity on the on the Marks Group Live main web page, where you'll see a chat window on every page. Just mention that you're asking a question regarding a class topic, and one of our trainers will be able to help you out. If you're having resolution or speed issues, you can click down in the lower right corner of your video screen. The 4 arrows there will maximize the video window on your screen, and the gear will allow you to adjust the resolution of your screen manually. From experience, we recommend leaving this as it is or setting it to auto, but you can certainly set this in case your internet speed is what it should be today. Also, feel free to download and follow along with our class documentation. While this is not a manual, it is a nice way to follow along as reference after the class. You can scroll down a little bit below the screen and see the download link. And now let's get to it. Here we go. As I work through today's live lesson, everybody, please remember to use the chat window to ask any questions. While I'm working on the Zoho material, you'll usually see my main Zoho screen running here off to the right. On the left side, you may also see the Marks Group Live logo. That's who's bringing you this training. There's some contact information in case you need to get in touch with us. And just below that, there actually is a small presentation window. There it is. And that's where I'll put the occasional tip or the trick, or maybe zoom in on part of the screen so that it's easier for you to see what I'm working on in the main Zoho window. Let's start by updating our personal settings. That's our first big takeaway. If you're not currently on your Zoho homepage, you'll find the homepage by clicking on the link in the top left corner of that blue bar or the colored bar that you see up at the top of your screen. Your colored bar may look slightly different from mine, which brings me to an important point. If your screen does not look exactly like mine does, especially the home screen, do not panic. Different installations have set up their Zoho instances differently, so that main home page might look slightly different. The tabs that you have across the top here may look slightly different. The setup area off to the right, that icon may look slightly different. It depends upon how your Zoho instance is set up and which version of Zoho you may have. All right, so right now the work that we're doing in this session includes features that should be in all Zoho installations, regardless of which version you're using. So let's find that Zoho setup button. You'll find this in the top, toward the top right corner of your screen. It is the pair of tools, I think that's a wrench and a screwdriver, and it's almost to the far right of that Zoho control bar. Different versions may look slightly different. They may look like a cog that's not a problem. Now here in the setup area, um, one of the nice features that Zoho gives you is something that you'll also find in both, well, I think all common operating systems these days, where there's a magnifying glass that indicates a search bar. That means that when I hover over this area, I get an underline and I can click. And if I know what I'm looking for, or if I can even use, if I know one of the words for what I'm looking for, Zoho will identify what it is. For example, right now, I'm looking for settings. So I might just type settings there, and Zoho shows me all the possible setup options that include the word settings. This is very similar to using the search function in the setup function in the setup areas or in the control panels for major operating systems. Now, this is not the same as looking for a specific client or a specific contact or a specific account. This search function is purely for finding settings that are related to the search term. In my case, I actually know what I'm looking for. Just below the word setup, there is the word general and personal settings right there. So I'm going to click on that, and now I'm in my personal settings area. Now, this is not a social media profile where it's usually a good idea to lie with abandon. Here, you're going to enter information that you will share with coworkers and possibly also with accounts, contacts, and leads. So the more accurate and complete you are here, the more value you and your coworkers will get out of your CRM. To edit your personal settings, click on the pencil to the right of your name. On my screen, you'll see that my name is TMG Live Admin. Yours hopefully is something a little bit more personal. Depending on your role in the organization and how your version of Zoho is set up, you might find that some fields are not editable. For example, I can't edit some of the fields at this point in this installation of Zoho. If I'm logged in as a general user rather than an administrator, my role and my profile may have locks beside them, meaning that I don't have the administrative rights to change these. There we go. Role and profile have locks beside them, which means that I'm not able to alter these. However, there's a pencil beside the email, and I can click in that field as well. Let's see, I'm going to return to Live Gen User. Let's see, I'm going to set Live Admin to be my name here. I'm going to leave that as it is. Actually, I'll say Marks Group Live for my first name. Now, what you'll notice actually off on the left side here, you'll notice that there are red underlines below some of the fields. So last name, email, role, and profile. That means that I must have information in these fields. Other fields where there's no underline below the field name, those are optional fields. In this case, they're mandatory. Actually, I'm going to change that back to TMG. Now here's a quick user interface tip for you. Oh, I saved that. I accidentally hit the save key. Up here at the top, it tells me that saving my changes was successful. If I cancel, I can simply click there. All right. Quick user interface tip. If you're in any field in almost any operating system and you want to get to the next field, you can simply hit the tab key instead of having to click through. Let's see. As we scroll down here, I can see that I also have address information. After we get past the first section, we don't see any more fields underlined in red, so we know that these are optional values. I'm going to set my address to, instead of city, I'll change it, actually I'll leave it at Bala Cynwyd. And my date of birth, I will set to just so that we can see what it looks like. When I click on a calendar field in Zoho, I often get an option. I also often get a calendar that pops up where I can easily click through different months, years, and days. All right, if you've messed something up and you want to get out without saving, of course, you can click on the cancel button. If you want to save your changes, you'll hit the save button, and Zoho will give us again a little pop-up window at the top that says the update was successful. Now here's something that might throw you off the first time you try this. Off on the left under Setup and then General, you can see that we're in the Personal Settings area. But if I go down below, if I scroll down, there's more than just the user information and the address information. I can also add social profiles and locale information. Locale information is, there's a pencil beside here. I can add my social profiles up above. We'll get to those in another lesson, I think. Clicking the locale information can be useful, particularly if you're working in an organization where you have multiple people, where you have colleagues in different time zones. It is, and I speak from sorry experience here, it is sadly embarrassing to miss a meeting because you or your colleagues didn't realize that you were in different time zones. Beyond that, Zoho is just amazingly cool in that you can set the language of your interface. Just remember, any information that you typed into these fields doesn't get translated. It's just the interface. You might want to remember the cancel and the save buttons there, because I'm about to do something interesting here. Let's change this to, let's say, German. If I change my language to German, Zoho will think for a few moments. And now, instead of home, leads, contacts, leads, campaigns, and activities, I have home, leads, Kontakte, Kunden, Kampagnen und Aktivitäten. So it's changed my entire user interface to a different language. I'm going to go back into my settings and I'm going to change that back to English. Now the reason I'm suggesting that you remember that cancel is off to the left and save is off to the right is because if you accidentally change your user interface to a language you don't speak, you just have to remember that left is cancel and right is save, and find your way back to this information. Find your way back to this screen. And here we go. We're back in English. Home, leads, contacts, accounts, campaigns, activities, and deals. All right. Let's go a bit farther down. As we scroll down, I can set a signature here. Now you might want to spend a few minutes thinking about creating your signature, and you should return to it whenever some aspect of your job changes, since the signature is attached to all communications that you send from within the Zoho platform. This can be fairly complicated with rich text, lists, indented texts, hyperlinks, tables, sections, emoticons, and even pictures. From a compatibility standpoint, it might be a good idea to keep your signature to minimal simplicity here, because the more fancy you make it, the less likely it is to work for everybody else. For example, some operating systems don't have the same fonts that other operating systems have, and hyperlinks can be dangerous if the URL changes. On the other hand, the more information you have here, the more helpful it can be. So here's a really simple signature that we've already got here, that we've already set up. I'm going to refine this a bit. Let's see if I can pull up the right slide here in PowerPoint. There's the pencil icon that shows that we can edit something. Those are our required fields. That's the underline that shows you that a field is required. And that's what I want my signature to look like. That's not what it looks like, as you can see in the signature area here. So I'm going to click on the pencil that indicates that I can edit that field. And you can see that we have a large number of editing functions here. These are fairly standard editing functions that you'll find in many contexts. Let's see. I'm going to start by taking the words Marks Group Live Trainer, and I'll make that bold and italic. Then I'll say, let's turn email us into a hyperlink. We do that by clicking on the chain icon. When we hover over these functions, we get a pop-up reminder or a pop-up hint as to what the function is. So I'm going to turn this into a link. I'm going to say that's an email link. And I'm going to say, let's make that support at marksgrouplive.com. I can even include a default subject. In most cases, that's not necessarily a good idea, especially in something that's as general as a signature file. In different contexts where you have, say, a hyperlink that's coming from within a specific screen or within a specific type of message, preceding the subject line is a great idea. But in this case, it's part of a signature, so we'll leave the subject unspecified. I'll click cancel. Now that becomes a link. Let's take Marks Group Live. Let's put this, I'm going to use the lower Marks Group Live in just a moment. Let's take that and turn that into a URL that goes to our homepage. Let's go marksgrouplive.com. Click on that. Now there's an underline there. You'll find the underline down here, the horizontal rule, and then Marks Group Live. I can again make that bold, or I can use some standard HTML style headers here. So I'll make that header 3. And finally, as you can see off to the left of my screen here, just below the Marks Group Live logo, we see actually the Marks Group Live logo in my signature. So we can even add a photo in here. And I'll show you how to do that right now. There is a picture, a small image, an icon. Hover over it. It looks like a sunrise. I'll choose to think that that is sunrise over a green hill. If I click on that, I can insert an image. I can insert the image from my computer or from a web URL. And for now, I'm going to browse, and I've already set this up. Here's my Marks Group Live. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't see my screen. I'm selecting this. When I click on browse, it gives me a file picker on my computer, a very standard thing that you'll have seen before. All right, I now have a logo. I'm going to select Advanced Options down in this window, and I'm going to specify that I want to keep the aspect ratio of this image, and I'm going to make this image, let's say, 100 pixels wide, and I'll leave the alignment exactly as it is. And we won't have any borders or spacing on this. Alt text is good. Alternative text is always good in all communications, partly because it allows your content to be more accessible to more people, regardless of what visual capabilities they have. It's also using alt text for images is also a good idea because it improves your search engine rankings. So let's say Marks Group Live logo. That's my alternative text. So if somebody is using a non-graphics system to view this, they'll see the alt tag instead of the image itself. Okay, and there's my image. I'm going to make that slightly larger, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on the icon to edit the image, and I'm going to make that 150 pixels. I'm going to keep the aspect ratio. Let's set that back to 150 pixels. Keeping the aspect ratio simply means that it won't distort the image. I kind of like the looks of that, so I'm going to save that. And there's my signature file, recreated pretty much the way that I think we wanted it to look. Now, having explained all that, it's entirely possible that your organization will ask you to adopt a business standard signature line, in which case either you'll do it or perhaps your organization may even do it on behalf of you. Let's see. We're almost done with the personal settings. The allowed IP addresses is something that we will get into on, I think, in another lesson on securing your Zoho installation. Typically, this is left as it is, unless you are worried about security issues, in which case you can configure specific IP addresses and ranges. Down at the bottom, right at the bottom here, we have display, name, format, and preferences. So the way that Zoho shows us names here, it'll show us salutation, first name, and last name. And then in sort order, when we ask Zoho to sort our information, it'll go by last name and then first name. We can change that. In fact, there are systems that do this, and at least one CRM that I know of and quite dislike defaults to first name, last name, and doesn't let you change it. So Zoho is wonderful in that it gives us this option. For the name format, we have 6 options here. Whichever one works for your organization, the way that you do business, and perhaps the cultural context in which you're working. So here we're leaving this with salutation, first name, and last name. To give you an indication of what that would look like, salutation, first name, last name would be Dr. Michael Friesen. This one would be Dr. Friesen, Michael. This one would be Michael, Dr. Friesen. This would be Michael Friesen, Doctor. Here we would have Friesen, Dr. Michael, and Friesen, Michael, Doctor. Okay. Finally, way down at the bottom, we have a single option under themes. We have a spectrum bar here, a color bar. All that this changes is the color of the Zoho control bar at the top of your screen. So I can change that to, say, teal, or I can change it to a sort of magenta kind of look. We can go with a brown color. We can go with dark gray. This is a matter of personal preference or organizational preference. I'm going to set it back to blue for this lesson. Different versions of Zoho will have this, may have this in different places. The one other reason that you might want to set this, apart from personal preference, is if you or your users, somebody who's using this system, has a color differentiation issue where one or more colors may be more difficult for that person to see, particularly in terms of luminance and contrast. And finally, note that for some Zoho instances, this theme selector is near the top of the personal settings. One last thing that I'd like to change in the personal settings, as I scroll up, I want to change my photo up at the top. To do that, there's a word change just underneath the silhouette, the Marks Group logo. I'm going to select something that is more personal. I got a color picker, I'm sorry, not a color picker, I got a image selector here. I can either drop a image directly on this area, or I can browse for a local file. I'm going to browse a local file. I happen to have a picture here. There we have a picture. what we get now is we have the ability to set exactly which part of the image winds up being used for the photo in Zoho, and you're expected to use a square image. I can adjust the sizing of this. It won't make the picture larger or smaller, but it allows me to capture exactly the parts of the image that I'm hoping to get. So I can select this, I can select crop and set, and now I have a picture there. This works much, much, much better if the picture that you're starting with is relatively square. If it's squished in one direction or another, either it's squished left to right or if it's squashed top to bottom, you're going to have a much harder time selecting a square that will form the basis of your image. I'm going to change this back to our Marks Group Live logo. There's my logo. Do not worry about whether you have a black background or not. The black background simply has to do with transparency in the original image. I'm going to select all of that pretty much, crop and set, and there we go. We're back where we started from. If you need to make your images square, you can simply use something like GIMP or Graphic Converter or Photoshop and add padding, just blank padding to the top and bottom of your image so that Zoho is able to, so that you're able to select a square around the image. All right, let's go here. Let's take a quick look at some of the most commonly used modules. I'm going to get out of this setup area. A module in Zoho can be thought of as a section or a function. Now, wherever I happen to be back in Zoho, if I want to get back to my home screen, back to sort of a familiar starting point, I can click on the word home up at the top left area of that Zoho control bar. Now, whenever you get yourself lost in something that's confusing in Zoho, there are two key suggestions. First things first, see if there's a button labeled Cancel, or if there's a big X that denotes that you want to cancel whatever window you happen to be in. And second, you can almost always cancel something that's going badly by clicking the home link at the top left corner of your screen. Don't panic if your screen doesn't look exactly like this one here. Depending on which version of Zoho you're working in and how your administrator may have set things up, your screen may look different from mine. You should have access, though, to all of the modules that we're going to look at right now. Immediately off to the right of the Home module, there's a module called Leads. A lead is a person or an organization that you know about that might be interested in doing business with you at some point in the future, but you are not currently doing business with them. You've met them at a trade show, or you've spoken with them, or they've contacted you, or they've completed an information request form, or you want to contact them to develop a business relationship. I'm going to click on one of those leads so we can look at some of the information that's available to us there. Let's go for Chuck Shaw. I'm going to click, as in most of Zoho, I can click on when I'm hovering over something that is clickable. Instead of being a white cursor, I get a white hand, the standard click on this. So I'm going to click on Chuck Shaw. Chuck Shaw works for the ABC Ball Bearings Company. As we scroll through this list, you might see that there are locks beside some of the fields. That means, of course, that I can't change them. Usually because that information is automatically set by Zoho. Depending upon your level of administrative access, you can change the way that Zoho behaves. I can scroll through this list. I can see lead information. I can see address information, description, the scoring has to do with some more advanced functions of Zoho that we will cover in the advanced setup. We can talk about visits. There are notes. These are great notes. It's great having the ability to add notes to a record. Open activities, closed activities. All right. One of the most basic activities that we can do and create, that we can accomplish in Zoho, apart from looking at people that are already in our system, is creating a new lead. There are 3 ways to accomplish this. First, you can click on the plus sign. Then we go back to the leads menu. You can click on the plus sign that's off to the right, just to the right of the word import. Click on that, and I have the option to create a lead. I'm going to cancel that and show you another way to do this. Up at the plus sign in the top of the in the Zoho control bar, you can see all the different types of records that we can add to Zoho, not just in the leads module, but in all of Zoho's modules. So depending on which version of Zoho you have, you may or may not see all of these options, but every version of Zoho will give you the ability to create a lead. So we can do it that way. I'm going to show you one more way to do this. And in fact, in one of the organizations that I work with, the most common way that we create leads is not actually by individually typing them in. Instead, we import them, which you'll find up near the top toward the right. I can say import leads. Now we're in a new window, and we're only going to look even briefly at the left option here, where we can upload a file into Zoho. If you have fewer than 5,000 people, you can upload the file. You can use an Excel file, you can use a virtual card file, or a virtual card file actually is commonly used in address books, or you can use a comma-separated variable file or a CSV file. If you have more than 5,000 records, you must use a CSV file. I actually recommend that you always use the CSV format. We will delve into imports in another training session. So that's an incredibly powerful thing to do. As I've mentioned, in organizations that I work with, we most commonly get our leads, or we get most of our leads through the lead generator at trade shows. So say you're capturing all the badges that have come within scanning range, and now here you have a big list of names and contact details that you would really rather not manually type into Zoho. And so that's where the import function becomes very, very useful. Right now, though, I'm going to cancel out of here. And again, I can either click on the cancel button, or I can click on the home button. In this case, I can also simply click on the leads button, and it takes me back to the leads screen. Right now, I'm going to create a lead as if I had just met somebody. Perhaps a phone call came in, perhaps that person came to visit. Whatever the case, here we are creating a new lead. As you may remember, any field that has a red line underneath it contains information that must be completed. So let's make the company the future. And the first name will be Dr. Leonard. Last name is McTavish. I can set the title. Let's make this person the Chief Medical Officer. Email will be drlmctavish@thefuture.com. The more information I put in here, the better it is. Let's just do a default phone number. website is thefuture.com. As I've mentioned, the more information you put in here, the more valuable it is. The lead source is particularly useful also. It's helpful to know how you encountered this person and what kind of industry they're in. Let's say that this is a cold call and the industry is, of course, this is a large enterprise. But we have a number of options here. Wherever you see a pick list like this, it is possible for an administrator to modify these pick lists. That can be incredibly powerful and very useful. Let's set that to large enterprise. Let's see, the follow-up date is also super helpful. The follow-up date is helpful because when you're creating the lead, you're usually doing it out of a certain motivation. And Zoho will prompt you as the follow-up date gets closer. So let's say our follow-up date is January 15th. In the description field, let's see, where have I got my description field? As I scroll down, there's the address. That can be helpful. As we scroll down here, the description field, especially when you're creating a contact, the description field is going to help you remember why you put this person into your CRM in the first place. It's entirely possible for you to create a CRM in the heat of a moment and say, gosh, this is a great person that we want to get back in touch with. This person could be really, really positive for our business or provide some great source of incoming materials, or a person that is very interested in purchasing our product. If you don't put that information into a description, you may find yourself a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later thinking, who? That's a terrible situation to be in. Wanted to ask about the feeding habits of small furry mammals. All right. I can save my work. Of course, I can cancel, or I can save and create a new one, new lead right away. I'm just going to click save on that. There we go. And now we have a record. We'll return to Dr. Leonard McTavish shortly. I'm going to close that for just a moment, and we will come back to that. Up next, we have accounts. Sorry, not contacts, we have accounts. You'll probably find the accounts beside the leads button. Once again, don't panic if it doesn't look exactly like yours does. I'm going to set my view to a table view. If the leads module was where we put people that we want to do business with, then the accounts module is where our wants have become reality. These are the organizations that we're actually doing business with. When we click on one of those accounts, let's go for Black Sheep Studio, for example, you'll see that the contact is part of the organization's account record. So in this case, the contact is Michael Friesen. Here are the deals we currently have. There's the next action that we have to do for the Black Sheep Studio. If we look at another organization, let's go to another account. Let's go for, let's see, do we have Bill's Boats? There's Bill's Boats. Bill's Boats has 2 contacts, so there are 2 people associated with that. As we scroll down, there's our account information. Here's information about this organization. There's the address information, description, notes. You can see that this is actually a record of our business with Bill's Boats, a record of our interactions with people, with contacts here, a record of what we've done with this organization, what we do with them, for them, quotes, sales orders. Again, some of these things depend upon the specific version of Zoho that you're using, but the basic functionality of accounts is going to be the same in all versions. I will reiterate, though, that the more accurate information that you have in your CRM, the more valuable it becomes. Not linearly, but exponentially. It's not just a historical record of what you've done with a specific client or organization. It can also be a powerful planning tool, and we do explore those opportunities in future lessons. One other module to look at right now, contacts. If you've already found it on your screen, congratulations. If you're looking for it, you'll probably find it up near the top, near the home, leads, and accounts. These three modules, leads, accounts, and contacts, are the modules that you're probably most likely going to be using on a day-to-day basis with your CRM. All right, here are my contacts. Let's review who's who and what's what in the big scheme of things. Let's see if I can switch that slide here. All right, a lead or an organization. Say a lead is when we say hello to somebody. We've met somebody. A lead is a person or an organization that we want to do business with. We've met them and we're interested in doing business with that person. Contacts, by contrast, are a person who works for or is an account. So we meet somebody, we say, hello, we'd like to do business with you. When we do when we set up a deal, when we deepen our business relationship, either as a vendor or as a supplier, it's called converting a lead to an account. And what Zoho will do is, Zoho will take our lead and create two records, one contact and one account record. So a lead is a prospect, a contact works for an account is the organization that we're doing business with. Let's go back to Dr. Leonard McTavish, who was a lead of ours. There he is, Leonard McTavish from the future. All right. Up near the top of the lead record, there's a button that says Convert. When we do this, Zoho gives us the opportunity to create a new deal for the account. That's very handy. I'm not going to set that at this time, although it is incredibly a very powerful function that we will deal with in another lesson. I can set the owner of the new record. I'm going to leave that as the live admin. That can be useful in case you have different people who are responsible for generating leads versus those who are responsible for handling accounts. And then I can click on Convert. Now what has happened is that my lead has been converted into an account and a contact. Now to test this, I'm actually going to go back to my leads and I'm going to see if Leonard McTavish is there. And he's not. Instead, I can go to contacts and I can see, is Leonard McTavish there? Let's see, scrolling down through the list. There's Leonard McTavish in my contacts, and the account, there should be an account for the future. When I click on the future, I should see that there is I'm not seeing that. Okay, Zoho actually pops up this is for a gamification function. It pops up congratulations telling me that I've converted a lead to an account. This is useful for organizations that do gamification. All right. Next up on my screen, we have campaigns. You may have to go find them under the ellipsis. That's just to the end of that list or the end of that set of tabs up at the top. Campaigns are any kind of promotion that you're trying to run. Now, these aren't the actual email blast. It's not a conference itself. It's a record of that. Next up, very briefly, we have activities. Activities are, we actually have a whole lesson that work on activities. It's a nifty lesson, and I encourage you to find out when we're going to be running it next, or look for it in our archives. These are things that we need to do for a client. So it can be a phone call, it could be a meeting, running a report, setting up some kind of event. All of these are activities. Usually we don't create activities directly from the accounts page. Usually we do create them from the accounts page rather than from the activities page. Under deals, depending on the width of your screen, you may see more or fewer columns here, or you may find deals elsewhere on your underneath the ellipsis. Deals are very, of course, very important for any organization. They're a record of the business that we do. Other modules will be found under the ellipsis, which I've avoided up till now. When we click on this, we see a staggering array of different modules. These are all different views of different things that happen in our business. Some of these may not be immediately or directly useful to you, but it's likely that somebody in your organization will look at most of these modules, or at least a subset of these modules, and discover that it could be very helpful in getting their job done. Very quickly, we can look at, if we want to, we can find a module by quickly typing its name. So if I type the letters DOC, that shows me the Documents module. If I look for reports, there's my reports. Let's click on that briefly. Zoho gives you an amazing array of reports. If you're looking for a barometer for the state of your business, some of these reports will be incredibly valuable. You could look at lead reports. Now this column here, these aren't simply reports. This column shows you groups of reports. So let's look at lead reports. These are all the reports that have to do with leads. Leads by industry, that's handy. This could tell you how many leads within your pipeline are represented by which industries. How about converted leads? I'll click on the left arrow to go back here. Converted leads. Any business owner who's looking for revenue is going to want to know how many leads turn into paying customers. One more type of report. Let's go back and look at activity reports. These are also very powerful. Here we can see that there are 3 different types of reports. There are, one of which reports on how many calls were logged today, perhaps by your sales team. So I can click on that, and I can see that there are no records. This could be very, very, very unhappy. Depending upon your industry, a day without calls could be a tomorrow without revenue. Another great way to visualize the data that's in your CRM is through analytics. You can visualize the data that you've got in your system and create your own reports. As with many of the other wonderful features of Zoho, we will cover these capabilities in other classes. Again, look through the archive of existing classes, or look at the calendar to see when we have another class coming up. Let's go back to our home page. Directing your attention to the top right, you can see a search bar. This one lets you find out just about anything that's in your Zoho system, including names, reports, accounts, and more. So I can look for future, and I can see that there's an invoice to the Future Inc. Leonard McTavish was created as a contact with the organization, the Future Inc. So that search function is really handy. Once again, if we want to figure out how to get out of this and back to familiar territory, we can either hit the left arrow button there in our web browser, or simply hit the X to get back to our home screen. The bell, which is next here, this gives us the ability to set a reminder and look at existing reminders. We have sales signals. That's a handy type of reminder. And we have feeds. These are things that need to be done. If you're an administrator and you need to approve certain deals or types of activities, this is where you'll find them. I'm going to click the X to get out of that. The plus sign, I mentioned this earlier. It allows me to create a new record to almost any of the modules. Earlier, we used it to add a lead, but we can also see that it allows us to add just about any other kind of activity or record that Zoho stores. I can create a new product. I can create an invoice. A solution is an interesting function that we actually use internally at the Marks Group for technical questions and answers. I can create a new job, an employee, a price book. So many great ways to add information, and the plus sign up at the top is the heart of that. Let's see if I can get back to my home screen. Okay, next up we have the calendar. And any day with a line underneath it indicates that there's something that's scheduled for that particular day. For example, on the 17th of January, there's something scheduled. I can click on that date and find out what that is. There we go. Discuss W2 and Discuss W3 are events that are scheduled on that day. I can return, of course, to my home screen, and there we are again. To the right of that, we do cover the calendar in greater detail in a later lesson. One of the powerful functions of the calendar, let's say I go to the weekly view, off to the right under options, I can see preferences. This is where you can configure Zoho's calendar to operate the way that you run your business. The CalDAV access option down here in the middle is particularly powerful since it means you can integrate Zoho with your conventional calendar app, whatever that happens to be, provided that it works with CalDAV, the CalDAV standard protocol. A bit farther down, we can set our Zoho meeting preferences. Here you can set the Zoho meeting system may be available on your installation of Zoho. It's similar to any web conferencing system. I can set reminders and notifications. This is powerful. This is useful. Notify me when an event is assigned to me. That's really handy, especially if you have multiple people working in your Zoho system and people have the ability to create events that involve you. Let's cancel out of there. Off to the right of the calendar, up in our Zoho control bar, we have an email button. If you have your email integrated with Zoho, you will see email in this window here. Mine does not show up because this is a test environment that we use, or a teaching environment that we use at the Marks Group. Finally, you can click on those tools. Remember those tools? We started our session today looking at those tools, and now we've come around full circle. The last icon at the top right, that's your profile control area, where you can do something very powerful and very important. Perhaps you can sign out when you need to. Okay, now we've already gone into a fair bit of Zoho navigation. The most important thing to remember, as I hope you've discovered about Zoho navigation, is that unlike some cities on the East Coast, you usually can get there from here, no matter where here happens to be and where you'd like to go within the Zoho system. The home button is almost always in the top left corner at the far left of the Zoho control bar. On the odd occasions where you don't find it, hunt for a big X in the top right corner of a window. Some modules can throw up a screen that hides what you're accustomed to seeing in Zoho. For example, you may see the game controller down at the bottom. Down toward the bottom right, you may have that controller here. And when I click on that, oh, my Zoho control bar has disappeared. If you've clicked on this by accident, do not panic again. In the upper right corner of that window, there's an X. I can click on that to get back to my familiar Zoho environment. The most commonly used modules, you're going to find those in the toward the left of the Zoho control bar, right beside the home tab. These exactly what is up there can change depending upon the work that you're doing. Zoho is pretty clever insofar as it can put up in that section modules that you use most frequently. So if we happen to be doing a lesson on reports, you'll see the reports up there. And eventually maybe leads, contacts, and accounts may fall completely away depending upon the work that we're doing in our Zoho installation. In case you don't find what you're looking for, under the ellipsis, you'll find anything that doesn't happen to be in those chiefly used tabs off to the left. There's a drop-down menu for every module in your Zoho installation, except for the ones that are already up there. Depending on your version and of Zoho and how it's configured, you may see more or fewer items than what I have here. All right. Navigating views and filtering records. I'm going to show you a feature in Leads that works in many other windows that Zoho uses. I'm going to click on Leads here. There we are. Let's say that we're in Leads and I have several thousand leads rather than a few dozen, or I have 23 leads, I guess, here. If I have several thousand leads, I'm probably either a very happy business person or I'm wondering why these have not yet been converted to accounts and contacts. Now, first, I can click on Open Leads off to the left and see which of my leads, or select which of my leads I really want to see. I might want to specify that I want to see Open Leads. Perhaps I want to see My Leads, which in this case happens to be almost exactly the same number of leads because, again, this is a training account. Maybe I want to see leads that have been recently created. That's a powerful function as well. If I move over to accounts, I'm going to close that window for the time being. Off to the left, we have my accounts as the default view. I can say show all accounts, not just mine. I can become even more granular about the information that I want to see here. On the left of the screen, toward the middle, there's a gray tab with a little greater than or less than sign there. It looks something like that. When I click on that, Zoho opens up a bunch of filters that I can use to choose what I see. As you can probably expect, filtering the view does not change the data. It just shows me a limited part of my data. I might start with all accounts and then go down a bit to filter out accounts by one of these parameters. For example, I want to show accounts where there's a open deal. There has been an open deal in the last 6 months. And then I can apply the filter. Now let me cancel that. Let me remove the filter and show all accounts again. Let's say I want to filter by the deal amount where the deal is greater than $10,000. Down here toward the right, it shows me 1 to 7. And here on the left, it shows me the total count is 7. If I uncheck that box, I can see that I have a total count of 25. I have a total count of 25 accounts. when I say, let's say, where the account name is Future. Okay, there are no deals by that name. I can say where the account isn't the word Future, apply that filter, and now I see again my full number of 25 accounts. When you uncheck one of these, it helps to apply the filter just so that it clears what you've already got there. These filters all behave the same way insofar as when you check it, you can select details that are specific to that filter. This works much the same way that many shopping systems do. If you specify too many conditions, you can clear the conditions. All right. If you look up near the top left of that table, I'm going to put away our filters. Up to the top left, there's an icon that looks sort of like that. It looks sort of like a table with a plus sign in the bottom right. That tells me that I can configure the columns in my table. So I can add columns from this area. Down here I can add the ticker symbol or the number of employees. I can click the created time and so on and so forth. I can also change the order of these. So if I think that the phone number is more important than the billing state, I'll grab the phone number and I can move it up to the top. From top to bottom represents left to right. So now when I save this, I see that the account name is followed immediately by the phone number. I can sort the list. I can sort it ascending or descending, unless I've already sorted it ascending. If I've sorted it by ascending, then my options are to unsort the list. Let's see, there we go. So if my if my column is already unsorted, I can sort ascending or descending. If the account, sorry for the typography there, if the column is already sorted in ascending order, I can select descending order or unsort. And if it's already descending, I can select ascending or unsort. So it gives me the options that it currently is not using. All right. Finally, I can control how many records I see on a given page. Here, I happen to have, you can see down in the lower left corner, you can see that I have 25 records on this page, and I'm only showing 20 records per page. I can click on the left arrow icon to see the other 5 records, or I can show a greater number of records per page. This is simply a question of whether you prefer clicking or swiping or scrolling. So I think that takes us to what we've done today. Today, let me go return this to our home screen. Today, our 5 big takeaways. We took a look at how to update your personal settings. We took a look also at reviewing the Zoho modules. We've reviewed the main menu navigation and shown you how to quickly move from one part of Zoho to another. We've looked at navigation tips for how to handle views, and we've looked at advanced filters to show you exactly what you're looking for. And with that, I'd like to suggest that if there are any questions at this point, I encourage you to ask them. You can type them into the field, into the Zoho question field. I'm sorry, not into Zoho, into the Vimeo chat area, and I can pick up your questions there. I'm going to take a few minutes right now and give you a minute or two to see if there are any questions and for me to review those questions. Before I get into the Q&A section of today's session, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you'd like to leave early, please be sure to check the calendar section of the website to see upcoming trainings and what we'll be going over. If you have any suggestions for other classes or how to adjust this class topic to make it more useful for you, please email us at support@marksgrouplive.com. And if you can't stick around now for the Q&A session, you can still email us questions at, again, that email, support@marksgrouplive.com, and we will answer that way. So on to the Q&A section of the class. If you don't mind, give me a couple of minutes to review all the chat questions that were posted, because I want to make sure I don't miss any. Also, feel free to use the next couple of minutes to add new questions, because I will be monitoring that.